Hello and welcome to the Feminine Millionaire Show. I'm your host, Polly Alexander. I'm a success coach, intuitive healer, and a passionate creative. And I believe that we all have the power to manifest magic and miracles into our life. If creating success in a spiritual, feminine, and joyful way is your goal, this show is for you. You'll understand how to overcome your past, bring your soul's greatest gifts to the world, and up-level your income, impact, joy, and happiness. Let's all rise together. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Feminine Millionaire Show. Now, before I dive in and start the really powerful interview that you're going to love today, I just want to share some very exciting news. So I run a really powerful results-orientated women's mastermind called Thrive Beautifully. This helps you double your income and work with more joy, ease, and happiness. Typically, people that come in diversify their income streams, start new avenues to their business, fall back in love with their business, and start working in a way that really lights them up and feels balanced and joyful. And for the last 5 years, an online retreat has been part of the membership. But I just got a divine download to bring this back in person to Ibiza. So I'm going to be hosting at my home in Ibiza the Thrive Beautifully Women this October. And this retreat is included in your membership. So for more details, go to polyalexander.com/thrive-beautifully or check out the link in the show notes. Okay, now let's dive into today's episode. I'm really excited to have a special guest on the show this week, Liz Benditt. Welcome, Liz.
Thank you for having me.
So I'm going to introduce Liz before we dive into her remarkable story. Liz Benditt is a senior marketing executive with 25 plus years of professional experience. After enduring 5 different cancers over the past 14 years, Liz leveraged her experience as both a marketeer and a cancer patient to launch TheBalmBox.com, a site featuring functional self-care and gift packages for cancer patients. In addition to her role as president and CEO of TheBalmBox, Liz teaches undergraduate marketing courses at the University of Kansas School of Business. Liz lives in the Kansas City metro with her husband, 2 teenage kids, and 1 terrible dog, who has just introduced himself. It's great to have you on the show, Liz.
Thank you for having me. And Maggie.
The therapy dog. I think all dogs are therapy dogs.
Yes.
So this series is about women who've reinvented themselves in midlife and beyond. And before we talk about the remarkable reinvention that you have created and said yes to, can you rewind to before your reinvention started and what your life looked like?
Yeah, I mean, if I do, I go all the way back, and it's interesting. I have a teenage daughter that's just about to leave for college in the fall. You know, she's launching her adult life, and it's making my husband and I kind of reflect on where we were at this stage. And so when I graduated from high school, I went to Boston University undergrad, got my degree in broadcast communications, and went to go work at Disney World. And when I was it's a crazy story that I will not go into great depth, but one of my professors from BU was recruited to work at Disney World in Florida, and he recruited me to come work for him. And it was an incredible experience. And one of the things that we got to do was help open the Disney Institute, which was at this point a failed Disney resort. The idea was that you would go and try something new. So you could go and take a cooking class or do an ancestry course, or you could learn to draw. And then we also built this whole TV and radio station. We created a class, the Disney News Network. It was really fun. People would come in and be anchors and reporters and the whole nine yards. We got there, we did all these programs, and people said, wow, this is great. Can I get a videotape of my experience on Disney News Network? I want to show it to my family and friends. And I'm telling you, like, how old I am, this is like VHS. Like people wanted tapes. This was, pre-digital. And we hadn't thought of that. We were just so focused on the content. We hadn't thought how we might generate incremental revenue, and also just a process to get these videos that we were making and get them duplicated or dubbed and then sold. Here I was, 21 years old, and my boss said, "Can't figure it out." This was not his area of expertise. He was like, just go figure this out. And so I did all the research, bought a dubbing machine, worked with the folks at the gift shop to create a process where we would duplicate, take orders, make the tapes, give the tapes to the gift shop. The gift shop would sell them to the customer or the guest, as you say, Disney, and then our department would get the revenue. And it was like a process. It took me about a couple of months, and I did a great job of it. And my boss at the time, who, was also a mentor, said, "Have you thought about getting an MBA? Because clearly you're really good at this business operations side of broadcasting, and in some ways more so than I was in terms of like writing and creative." And he got me thinking. And so I took the GMAT and I applied to grad school, and I left Florida, went all the way to the other side of the country and got my MBA with a focus on marketing at University of Southern California in Los Angeles. So if you talk about like kind of the first change, it was that, right? I got out of school thinking I was going to go be, a TV producer or a journalist or something in this TV broadcast world. And I made a really big flip, right, to kind of focus more on the business side versus the creative. It doesn't mean that but the foundation was there. I learned how to, in my undergraduate degree, I learned how to tell a story, how to write a story, how to, speak in front of people confidently. When I was in grad school, it was also at the same time of the dot-com boom, and got really interested in e-commerce and internet. And I was recruited by Hallmark.com to go be a assistant marketing manager at Hallmark.com, which was a brand new business for Hallmark corporate. And the reason that I was interested in Hallmark was because my parents at that point had relocated to Kansas City. Hallmark was in Kansas City, and my mom had breast cancer, and I wanted to be closer to her. And so I left California, went to Kansas City. Everyone thought I was bananas crazy. At the time, I thought, I'm just going to go do this for 2 years, be with my mom, and then I'll come back. Well, met my husband, bought a house, had some kids, got married, decided, we made a life for ourselves in the Midwest. So that was kind of, the phase 2 career was marketing with really a strong focus on e-commerce and data-driven marketing. So kind of using all of those skills and that math that I learned in grad school to make decisions for businesses or for our business based on data, not based on creative, not based on story. And that has been foundational to my growth as a marketer. And I think that that's also been the really big change you're seeing in the field of marketing over the past 20 years is marketing that's based on data versus intuition, right? Versus the creative. The ad guys don't have the power anymore. The analysts do, if that makes any sense. So I spent about 20 years working at various places with marketing. I worked both in-house at places like Hallmark and then also at an ad agency for about 5 years. I kind of bounced back and forth between being on the agency side versus being on the inner circle, worked for both nonprofit and for-profit organizations. And throughout that time, going back to the cancer, I had 4 different cancer diagnoses. And I kind of aged them by my children. So the first one was when my son was less than a year old and my daughter was a toddler. The last one before I started TheBalmBox, both my kids were teenagers. So it is just something that my family has grown up with and work around, right? I've been very, very lucky that all of my cancers have been caught relatively early and were very treatable. So the only one that was really scary was the first, that was melanoma. And the melanoma was the one where we had a weekend in between. I'd have surgery on Friday, and then Monday we would find out whether the cancer had spread to the lymph nodes. And if it had, then I would have less than a year to live. And if it hadn't, no big deal, wear more sunscreen. Like those are 2 very different options. And luckily it hadn't spread and I was fine. And life moved on.
Let's rewind to that time when you first got diagnosed with cancer. You're settled in the Kansas City area. You've got an established career as a marketeer. And then along comes the cancer. So this just came out of the blue. Did you ever feel at this point you were going to change your career, or just like, I carry on as normal as I can?
The first cancer never made me feel like I wanted to change my career. It didn't. It was the fourth. After the fourth, that was where I really felt like it was a combination of factors. One, I was vice president of marketing at a commercial manufacturing company, and I was the only woman on the executive leadership team, and it was tough. It was just tough. I think I did not fit in both. I mean, it wasn't just gender, right? I think it was an extremely conservative organization, and I am more progressive. So I think there was just a cultural misfit right there that I undermined when I was interviewing, because they offered me a lot of money. And I got real excited about the money and ignored all the other red flags. And boy, did I learn my lesson. That was tough. And so that's when I started to get much more involved with nonprofit organizations, thinking, okay, well, if I can have meaningful experience in nonprofit organizations and help the world in that place without giving up my amazing paycheck, that would be great. And so I did that for a couple of years. And I think all that did was make me unbelievably busy. And then I had my fourth cancer. And that is when I started to think, okay, that's when I slowed down. And I had two things happen at the same time. I was going through radiation treatment, and that was my fourth cancer, was my first breast cancer. And so I had a lumpectomy, which is a much more minor surgery than a mastectomy. At the time, I didn't know that. I had a lot of pain and challenges recovering. But regardless, I got out of my lumpectomy. I had to go through 7 weeks of radiation treatment. And radiation, some people do fine, some people don't. And unfortunately, I went in super arrogant, thinking I run marathons, I'm fine, I'm like really healthy and I'm young. Everyone in this waiting room is like in their 70s. Look at me. I don't belong here. I scheduled all my appointments for 7:30 in the morning so that I could just get my radiation and go straight to the office. And it was really stupid. And I was caught very unaware. I ended up not just getting red and burned, but my skin turned purple and then cracked and fell off. I had to stop multiple times while they let the skin heal. It was just overall really tough. It was really, really tough, and I was miserable. And everyone kept bringing me all this pink stuff, all this breast cancer pink stuff. And at the time, what I really wanted were, ice packs that wouldn't leak through my clothes, and lotions, and, lip balm. And like, I needed tangible items. I needed deodorant that was paraben free and that, I could still wear while going through radiation, just all of these dumb things. And in reality, what I got was, like I said, a bunch of pink mugs and, pink hats and pink t-shirts that said my tatas tried to kill me. And it was just so well-meaning, but not very useful. And that is where the seed for the TheBalmBox came, was there's got to be a better way. But, I didn't really act on it. I just ruminated on it. And it really wasn't until 2020, when we hit the pandemic, that I realized that I had like more than a minute to sit down, because it was the stay-at-home orders and everyone was at home. And I thought, you know what? I'm in marketing and I've got all this time, because all of a sudden I don't have to drive to weekend volleyball tournaments or tennis lessons or Girl Scout troop meetings, all this stuff. And instead, let's focus. And so I wrote this incredibly long survey, one of these surveys that nowadays nobody would ever answer, but it took like 30 or 40 minutes to complete. But because it was the stay-at-home order, it was this like moment in time where everyone was at home and online and bored. Giving them something to do, like answer my survey and share it, was amazing. And it went viral and collected almost 600 responses, which was amazing. And the survey really validated my experience. When you ask cancer patients, what are some things that you would like and need when you're going through various treatments, the top scoring items were all functional. Things like lip balm, lotion, fleece blankets, essential oils, functional tools. The things that got the worst ratings were all what I would call like kind of, emotional or inspirational. Kicking cancer tote bags, kicking cancer coffee mugs, worry stones, inspirational poetry. Like, people want functional items. And when you ask people that are buying gifts for cancer patients. What are you buying? It's mostly flowers and food. And I thought there's this real disconnect between what people are getting and what they want. And gosh, there's a business. So I played with that business model for about 2 years, but then all the moons aligned in the perfect way. I got asked to teach part-time at University of Kansas School of Business, which gave me kind of a part-time job and runway. It was all through referrals. It was crazy. Someone that had previously been teaching a very specific class, a customer relationship management class, which is loyalty marketing, data-driven marketing, which is my area of expertise, suddenly passed away right before the semester started, and they needed someone to teach it. And they asked around in the community, and my name got recommended. And it was just completely something I had never even considered doing and was just dropped in my lap, which was amazing. And so I had this opportunity to teach and had an absolute blast doing it, loved being part of the academic community. But beyond that, it just also provided my family with a little bit of income, right? While I also concurrently got my business off the ground. So it all worked out kind of, the world sort of offered me this opportunity and I took it.
Yeah, and I think that's what so often happens, especially when we're doing what I call purpose-driven work, work that we maybe didn't plan, but is really being of contribution to people. I find the universe will come along and line you up with the resources, the people,
I
the
agree. Yes.
opportunity that you need.
Yes.
And I hear like you had this new role that gave you some time to yourself. You had the pandemic that kept you at home. You had this wealth of marketing experience that you'd accumulated over how to launch things, grow things. You had your own health journey, which had taught you what you really need. So you knew the right questions to ask people. It's like you had the perfect storm of all these pieces of the jigsaw to create this new business.
Yeah, I really did. So I was a year and a half, or no, 2 years into running TheBalmBox. That was when I had my fifth cancer, and that was my second breast cancer. And that was the one that unfortunately was more invasive, and I had to have a mastectomy. But luckily, I did not need chemotherapy or radiation. So I was able to focus on surgery alone. But unfortunately, with that kind of surgery, it was two surgeries because the first one, they get rid of the cancer and they put a temporary boob in your boob. It's called an expander, and it basically holds the skin in place. And then afterwards, you can have reconstruction. And so I did my reconstruction surgery in July. So March, I had the mastectomy. July, I had reconstruction. And honestly, the reconstruction surgery in some ways was more invasive and difficult to overcome. But at that point, I had built the business large enough and had enough staff and had enough people that were well trained that they could carry it. And I could walk away for a couple weeks at a time to go take care of my health and then come back. And it was still there. And that was also, I think, kind of amazing. Like, had that cancer happened right at the beginning stages when it was just me, that would have been a lot harder. But because it happened when we were a little bigger, that also made it so much easier to manage, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I want to just press pause on the TheBalmBox for a moment, and we'll dive more into that
Sure.
business in a moment, and just circle back to what was the mindset that enabled you not just to survive and overcome cancer, but actually thrive in the midst of this journey?
I think I had a unique upbringing. My grandparents are Holocaust survivors. They met in hiding during World War II in Poland in a barn, and they hid in the false roof of a barn for 4 years. It's a crazy, crazy, crazy story. My mom was born in Poland. They emigrated to the United States when she was in kindergarten. It's this whole crazy story. They actually came through Mexico, got stuck in Mexico, then eventually made their way up to Texas. So I'm firstborn American in my family. And my grandfather was amazing. He's brilliant, was brilliant, and he started off with absolutely nothing. You can imagine, from hiding in a false roof of a barn to becoming a millionaire. I mean, he was extremely wealthy, and he was also extremely bitter. Every time anything happened that we didn't like, I would just hear from him, "Oi, how we suffered. Like, you don't know anything about suffering." So if a teacher was mean to me, or I didn't like my classmate, or I didn't win my soccer game, it just couldn't compare to his suffering. And on the flip side, you had my grandmother, who was joyful, and she was so grateful to be alive and so happy to have family, and felt like what she went through was horrible, but it brought her her new family. She was married and had a son, and they both died. She's gotten an unbelievable story as well, and she lived to be 95. And she taught me, right, that example, right, of you can have some really really heinous things happen to you, and but you can choose, right, to be joyful and be grateful for what you have, or you can choose to be bitter. And I just feel like her life, right, is just an example to all of us. In some ways, nothing is the Holocaust, right? So all of my cancers aren't the Holocaust. I'm not hiding in a false roof of a barn sharing one potato with 6 people, right? So it's a different kind of suffering, but I think honoring their suffering has helped me put my own in perspective, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting you say this because the last three people I've interviewed for this podcast have all come from Holocaust survivors. And I had no
Really?
idea because it's not in their bio. People who've
Yeah.
been really successful, very driven, very creative, created a lot of things in their life, and they've come from this same lineage. So I find it really fascinating how the lineages has evolved into these really strong, powerful women now
That
who,
is so interesting. I'll have to go back and listen to those episodes. That's fascinating.
yeah. Yeah. So you had these two examples as well of how you can do life. The same
Yes.
background, the same suffering, the same traumas. One person was bitter, successful, driven, successful, but bitter. The other person, driven, successful, but joyful and appreciative and grateful.
Yeah. And I think that example is something that I've always lived with. We talk about often in my family, and we talked about a lot at my grandmother's funeral. And so that's always stayed with me.
Beautiful. So, in a way, you're continuing her legacy
I
of
hope so.
finding the best in challenging circumstances.
I named my son after her. So yeah.
Oh, how special. So let's circle back to the barn box. So you've had this idea, the circumstances are there. What challenges did you face, like actually with the logistics, like getting the product to market? You obviously have a product based business. And just for
Yeah.
people listening, can you explain what the barn box actually is?
Yeah. So if I go back to my original vision, when I was going through radiation, I kept thinking, where is the subscription box service, right? That would give me a box of tools every week. Like I would love that. And that was my original idea. I developed. And then at the last minute, I thought, well, you know what? If I'm curating these boxes and I'm going to carry all these items, why not also sell them as individual boxes for people that want to buy a gift? And in
Mhm.
the first year, 85% of our sales were gifts, 15% were individual subscriptions. And I thought, okay, well, I could continue to fight for the subscription box business, which is not going well, or we can double down on gifts. And so we doubled down on gifts. And then it was another year or so of testing. And so, I'm a data junkie. I'm a total nerd when it comes to these things. And so we did a lot of testing and a lot of research. And what I found was when you give people too many choices, they get overwhelmed. But when you reduce the volume of choices, you have a higher conversion rate. And the other thing that I found was that when you're buying a gift for somebody going through cancer, there is you want to give them something that's going to be useful. But at the same time, you might not know exactly what they need, exactly what their side effects are, or something that's too invasive or personal. So, for example, no one wanted to buy a hair loss box, but they did want to buy a chemo box that had maybe one or two items in there for hair loss. So, everyone, the conversion rate on the generic chemo care box was much higher than the neuropathy box or the hair loss box. And so we got rid of all of the side effect specific products, redefined products as chemo, radiation, rest. And then the breast cancer boxes are specific because they are unique. Like when you're going through breast cancer diagnosis, one of the things that we have been curating and working on are pillow products. So things that you can fit, pillows under your arms that kind of get the weight of your arm or the friction of your arm off the side of your body. And especially seatbelt pillows, it's just one of those things you don't think about. But when your whole chest area is horribly tender, seatbelts are a problem. And so just this like really simple seatbelt pillow to kind of get the seatbelt off your body, it has been a real game changer. And I find that chemo patients love it as well, because if their ports are tender in their upper body, getting the pressure of the seatbelt off of their port area is also really helpful. So those seatbelt pillows are big sellers, big winners. The side pillows are great for mastectomy. About a year and a half ago, CVS picked them up to sell on CVS.com. And then we most recently came up with a new product, which is a drain holder. So I don't know if you know anyone that's gone through an upper body surgery, but what's very common now is they send you home with these drains sewn into the side of your body that connect to these little tubes called J drains. And when you leave, they give you like a safety pin to just pin the drains to your clothes, which first of all tear your clothes because the drains are often way heavier than the weight of, a t-shirt. And then beyond that, what do? You can't pin them to your head when you're in the shower or changing. So at home, I ended up finding this old lanyard from like a conference, those lanyards that hold your names. And then I had these like little rings that were part of a bra. And basically I jerry-rigged this system around to get my drains off my body and to just kind of carry them around my neck. And it was a game changer. It was so much more comfortable. And everyone that came to visit that had previously had breast cancer were amazed and wishing that they had that same product. And so we turned that into a drain holder product, and CVS is begging us to get it on CVS.com. We're working on it, and we're pitching it to a whole bunch of retailers next week. So yeah, I think all of those products, right, they come from need. And if you go back to, where we started, which was this idea of subscription boxes, to where we ended, which are mostly gift boxes, it's all been through test and control, test and control, test and control. You throw something out there, and then you have to have 8 to 12 weeks to see what happens and be patient. And I think there's 2 schools of thought about starting an entrepreneurship journey. One is you quit everything, you put all of your money and your time into your new business, and you push ahead on that because the fear of failure will drive you forward. Or there's what I did, which is you take on a part-time job that gives you the freedom and the time to work it out. And that's what I've done. And to me, that's a much lower stress way to launch a business. Perhaps it's taken us longer to get to where we are, but I think we end up in the same place with, a lot less angst. And financially, I have taken on no debt, 0. I have 100% ownership in my business. I don't need investors at this moment in time, which means I can make all the decisions that I want to whenever I want. I still do all the things that are important for a business, like, the analytics and a monthly P&L. But if it's a week late because I wanted to go to my daughter's volleyball tournament, then there's no investor hounding me for it. It's just me. So
Yeah.
I think that those are the choices that I made that have worked for me.
And what would be really exciting for you to create in the business from where you stand now?
Well, the next phase, and I'm working really hard on it, and maybe by the time this launches, we'll be, I'll have a different story for you, but we would really like to have our pillow products and the drain holder products in retail stores. So that's the next step.
Yeah. Would that have a significant impact on your business?
Yes, I would not have the time to teach any longer. I would have to walk away from University of Kansas, which it's bittersweet. It's been a wonderful place. I love my colleagues. I think the students are phenomenal.
In your reinvention, you've also gone from being an employee to being an entrepreneur.
Yeah. I love
Do you feel
that.
like you were an entrepreneur all along that sort of came into it later in life? Because you seem quite entrepreneurial in how you think and how you operate.
I think that what's interesting is I spent my very first, position out of undergrad was to work at Hallmark, which is a huge multinational corporation. And I did not like it. I did not like the experience of working in a big organization. I didn't like the politics. I didn't like the bureaucracy. And so ever since that time, I focused my career on working for small to mid-sized businesses. And so I think when you work in small to mid-sized businesses, you have more ownership, right? In general, it's just the nature of the beast. So I'm sure you're right that I've been drawn to positions where I have broader set of responsibilities. I think that was one of the things I did not like about working at a large organization, is that just by definition, everyone's job is much more narrowly focused. My husband works at T-Mobile, and I'm really grateful because we have amazing healthcare here in the United States. He loves being part of a really big organization. The politics and bureaucracy are just something that he rolls with. They don't bother him, and which has also given me the opportunity to go work wherever I want because our healthcare is managed through him. So that's also been in the US at least, important part of my journey is the benefits that I get from my husband have been given me the opportunity to go do some wackadoo things.
And let's just touch before we wrap up on how you've managed being a working mother, being on a serious health journey on and off over 14 years, and then also looking after two now teenagers.
When I had my daughter, I was working at an ad agency, and I remember at the time reading a lot about how to be a working mom, right? Like you're trying to figure it all out. And an article I read, and I wish I could remember where I've read it, on the interweb somewhere, was someone talking about how when you're a working parent, you have kind of these different lanes. You have your personal lane, you have your health, you have your kids, you have your job, and that it's impossible for all the lanes to be upright at all times. And that you have to borrow from one to focus on the other. And as long as you alternate between which lane you're pulling from in order to focus on the other, that's sort of the trick. Does that make sense? And I kind of look at it as a hand. I'm holding up my hand and I'm pressing down on different fingers. And that's always been my guiding light is, okay, this week I have a really big, like next week, my family's on their own. When I don't make dinner, we call it forage night. All nights next week are forage nights. I'm not cooking because I have this big conference. I'm doing all these pitches. Like they're on their own. So this week, I'm making sure they eat healthy. This week, we had shrimp for dinner, right? So this week is okay. And then next week, I'm walking away. My family is on their own. They're teenagers. If they eat McDonald's, I don't want to know about it. Like, it's fine. If that makes sense, that's been my guiding light, is making sure that I'm not pressing on one finger too hard, too often, and that I balance those things out.
So you're sort of rotating your energy and attention around these different pillars in your
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. I know that I need to exercise at least 4 times a week. And but 1 week I get 2 in, that's okay. But as long as it's not consistent, right? As long as I don't make that the new normal. So I give myself grace, if that makes sense, to skip some things sometimes. And as long as I'm not skipping the same thing all the time, it will all be okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the word that came to mind, is giving yourself grace.
Yeah.
When the kids at McDonald's, when the dog didn't get a walk, when you didn't get a walk, just letting it go. Yeah. Do you feel different about your work now that you've got your own business that's linked directly to what's meaningful for you?
Yes. I am making about half as much money as I used to. It is a significant change, and I am unbelievably lucky that I have the ability to do that. While it has changed our lives in that we can't afford like super bougie vacations, we still take vacations. I'm much more thoughtful about, my shopping habits and all those little things. But it is an unbelievable gift that I was able to do that. We can still send my daughter to college. We can, and my son too, when he eventually graduates. Again, I just want to acknowledge my privilege, right? That's the word I've been looking for. I want to acknowledge my privilege that I've been able to cut my salary in half and still have a good, comfortable family life. But the trade-off has been I'm more present with my kids and my family. I give my own self more grace. I'm certainly happier. And I love what I do. I love it. I can't imagine doing anything else. I really can't. Like the fact that I unsubscribed from various job opportunity emails to me was like really meaningful, right? Like I just didn't even want to, I don't care. I'm not looking to work for somebody else.
Right. There's no carrot that could be dangled that would be tempting enough.
I don't know. If somebody came in and wanted to buy the business for $1 gazillion, I would have to consider it. But, it's it's not for sale right now, and I'm really enjoying growing it.
Yeah, and I'm sure that you're going to take it from strength to strength. I'm
I love
excited for
that. I love your confidence.
Absolutely. I absolutely believe in you and what you're doing. I think there's a beautiful alignment that happens, I think, for women later in life when everything comes together, the past experiences, all the different work opportunities you've had, and everything kind of comes together, and you can really accelerate things quite quickly. And it feels like that's what you're doing now. How can people find out more about the BalmBox?
Yes, you can visit us at www.TheBalmBox.com. So that's TheBalmBox.com. We're on Facebook and Instagram. We're on LinkedIn. You can always connect with me on LinkedIn. I love connecting with other entrepreneurs, especially women entrepreneurs. One of the beauties of being in this business is I've connected with so many really interesting breast cancer patients that have come back and come up with these amazing products. And we're working on various collaborations. Some of the suppliers that we use for various balm boxes, like, for example, we use these amazing sweat-free ice packs from a business called So Young. And I've been talking to Catherine Young, who is amazing, also a women entrepreneur from Canada, and we're doing some collaborations with them. All the various partnership opportunities have been really, really fun. And again, brought me pride and joy. And I will also share with you, I think that I'm setting a good example for my kids. One of my business partners reached out to my daughter ahead of American Mother's Days in about a week and asked her for a quote. And my daughter wrote this unbelievable quote, and they posted it to Facebook. I'll read it for you. She wrote, "My mom is one of the most hardworking people I know. Through several cancers, she made it to every volleyball tournament, orchestra, concert, and debate event she could. I'm always in awe of her. She is absolutely the person I have gotten all of my passion and drive from." And it posted it to Facebook. And I love that. And I'm really proud of that.
How does it feel to see what you've helped her be and hear that?
I'm proud. I mean, look, she is her own person. My daughter is an unbelievable rock star. She's so smart and creative and empathetic. And I'm really, really, really proud of all of her accomplishments. And I don't want to take away from that. It's not like I gave her those accomplishments. They're hers. And yet I'm really proud that she also persevered. She learned to persevere, right? And I'd like to think my son has as well. I think everyone has seen my struggles, and I think, they all say that they're proud of me in their own ways.
Thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for sharing the journey of your reinvention. And I think it's so interesting. The seeds of resilience and survival were sown several generations before you, and you've really taken that torch and run with it. And I think what you're creating is tremendously exciting. I can feel your passion for the innovation in the business, the products that are functional that people really need, and your deep understanding of what it is to be in that position going through those different cancer treatments. So I think you're absolutely in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing. And thank you for coming on and sharing your journey to creating the BalmBox today. I really appreciate your time and energy.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you're enjoying the show, I would love a review on Apple Podcasts. If you use that platform, just scroll down to ratings and reviews, leave 5 stars and a quick review, and it really helps the podcast get seen by more people. It enables me to spread the word that true abundance, happiness and joy is possible for everyone. So thank you in advance for that. It really means a lot to me. Now, if you'd like to go deeper with me, as I mentioned earlier, the Thrive Beautifully Mastermind is open for enrollment, and this year only it includes an in-person event in Ibiza. You can read more details at the link in the show notes. I'm also hosting a live masterclass called From Stress and Overwhelm to Fun and Fulfillment on Tuesday the 6th of August. This is a masterclass for women entrepreneurs who are ready to shift the pattern of feeling stressed and overwhelmed in their business and lead with more fun and flow in both business and life. You can sign up for that with the link in the show notes. Have a wildly abundant week. Bye for now.